Good afternoon, everybody, and a grand welcome to this Facebook Live session. Many of you will be aware that we have been doing such sessions to raise awareness about a lot of cancers, and we have received overwhelming response and a lot of support for our patients. Joining us in our journey today is a personality who is always super passionate about the community service and raising awareness on mental health. She has won multiple accolades in speaking and writing events. 16-year-old Manya Lohan aspires to work at the United Nations. Who else would be a better personality to interview the man behind our mission to fight cancer the right way? Welcome, Manya, and over to you. Looking forward to a great evening with you as the interviewer and Mr. Suresh Ramu as our interviewee. Over to you, Ramu.
Thank you for that. So today we're joined by Mr. Suresh Ramu. He's a co-founder and CEO of Cytecare Hospitals, a network cancer hospital network, the first 150-bed organ-site-focused cancer hospital that went live on November 2016 in Yelahanka, Bengaluru. Mr. Ramu is an alumnus of IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta, and he started his entrepreneurial journey from 2011. He's also a co-founder of the Cytecare Research Space, a clinical research solutions organization. Mr. Ramu began his career with a startup telemedicine company, and then with his Quintus Transitional for about 10 years. With honor to have you here.
Thank you, Mami. Great to speak to you.
So let's start off this by a very interesting question, which I'm sure is in the head of everyone joining us today. How did you get into this stream, and what made you think that you are capable to do this?
I'll answer the second one first. I think capability is defined by the people around you who believe in you, and I think I would give it a lot to my parents, my brothers, and later my wife, Smita. I think family has always been important in terms of prodding you and telling you that you can do it. The fact that you can believe in yourself, I think, is important. And I think a lot of well-wishers came along my way. I think whether it was leading me to IIT Madras for my chemical engineering degree or later for my MBA. I worked in consulting briefly, but I was always interested in startups, and I joined a telemedicine startup company in Pune. I had no idea about healthcare. I had no idea about telemedicine, but it just sounded exciting. It sounded like something I should try, and it was based in Pune, which is my hometown. So I decided that it's been a long while out of home, and I said I must go back home. So I joined this startup and learned a lot about healthcare in India. I used to travel a lot into semi-rural parts of India, semi-urban parts of India, meeting with physicians and trying to understand what the needs of the patients are. And it was 20 years ago, but I can tell you that India has changed a lot, but some parts have not really changed, and patients still have to travel a lot to come to the cities. It's a huge effort. Today things have improved a lot with technology and communication, of course. And we used to use 64 kilobytes per second telephone lines, can you believe it, to consult remotely between physicians and specialists. So it was a completely different world. But that introduction to healthcare kind of was important for me. And I was fortunate to subsequently meet the CEO of Quintiles India, Dr. Farzan Engineer, and Himanshu Shah, who still are part of our team, the extended team at Cytecare. They are the co-founders here. And he took me in, Farzan took me into Quintiles, and I spent the next 10 years in a clinical research organization in a variety of global and local roles. In 2011, the Himanshu, Farzan, myself, and another co-founder, Lalit, we decided to step out and become entrepreneurs again, and we set up a research company. In 2012 and 13 were hard years, both from a regulatory standpoint in India for clinical trials, because there was a whole ban on clinical trials by the Supreme Court. But there was also for need of improved regulations. But there was also cancer in many of our founder families, and
Okay.
that kind of and we were treating our loved ones here in India as well as abroad. And I think you could see the gap in terms of what is possible, not in terms of expertise. I think India has some of the finest doctors and specialists, and in fact also technology. But somehow, from a patient perspective, we felt that there was a need to bring it all together in a better way. We felt that there was a need to create a hospital that patients can trust. So anyway, so serendipity to a large extent, and family, and a lot of things in healthcare, and I think just the fact that it's a booming segment and a need. Maybe those are the reasons why I got in here.
That sounds amazing. So, as you had mentioned that you worked at a telemedicine company for about 10 years, but being from an IIM and IIT background, how did you get people to invest into this?
So the telemedicine company was for a short while. It was too early for its time. I was there for about a year and a half. Subsequently, I joined a company called Quintiles, which is a contract clinical research organization worldwide. It is the world's largest, now known as IQVIA. But in those days, it was a small company led by a group of almost entrepreneurs. So I was there for 10 years in a variety of roles. Yeah. So.
Okay. So, as I know that Cytecare is a really special thing. What is the philosophy and how exactly do you all work, and what makes you different from, let's say, other cancer hospitals?
Yeah, you also asked me about the investors and their belief and how do we approach them, and I think it's related to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
See, when the concept was being thought about, and this is the end of 2013 and early 2014, we knew about oncology because, if you know 65-70% of worldwide research and development in all pharma, all biopharma R&D happens in oncology. And this is a fact that maybe a lot of people don't know, that approximately of the $130-140 billion, about $75-80 billion or more even is being spent on oncology alone. So we have been exposed to oncology a lot in our work at Quintiles in the research area. But healthcare delivery is obviously completely different. And you needed like-minded clinicians in the first place. You needed like-minded investors who are interested in high quality of healthcare delivery based on a foundation of, I think, the right values, and also who have a longer term horizon in terms of investment. Because it's a very heavy investment, and you need patient capital, literally patient, but you need to create something that goes way above and beyond what already exists. And I don't mean in terms of technology alone. I think it is purely the soft infrastructure. It is the people infrastructure that I think makes all the difference for the patient. And to create that is actually a lot of hard infrastructure, which is the design elements. So a lot of healthcare professionals had to be hired who know this industry in and out. We traveled, one of my colleagues, Dr. Selvin and I, we traveled to Europe, to the US. We visited several hospitals, in cancer hospitals in the world, and we found that there are many things in terms of design that we could do differently, even though you had to adapt it to the Indian environment. Our architect brought in a huge amount of passion and expertise, and I think passion was as important as the expertise to design something which is really superior from a patient perspective. And we always say that we are just a good hospital. I mean, we don't want to compare with another hospital, just a good hospital. But because, that's really what patients ask for. They don't ask for anything more. They just want to come to a hospital. They want to be in a good hospital. And whatever care is being done should be the right thing for them. So we can talk a lot about this subject because obviously this is very close to my heart. I mean, but I think it's trying to be different was not on the agenda. Trying to be good and serving patients is always on the agenda.
That sounds really nice. So going on the path of yours, you guys think not trying to be different, but you are tied up with an NGO called Humanist. How does that work out, and what exactly is Humanist? Because not many hospitals tie up with NGOs.
Yeah, Humanist Center for Medicine, as it is known, is a not-for-profit that was set up by two entrepreneurs and philanthropists, Dr. Anand Kumar and Dr. Jogin Desai. They're also dear friends of ours who also have a very close association with cancer in their own families. And they're just large-hearted, wonderful people, I must say. That I think they basically said we must do something to help the poor and the needy, especially the needy, because cancer treatment can become frightfully expensive because of the equipment, the cost of the medications, and sometimes it's just a long, drawn-out treatment that is necessary for the management or the cure of the disease. And then, as you know, in India, patients are not often insured, medically insured, or they have very low medical insurance. So the need for funding support is even greater in a country like India. So these two gentlemen came across and they said, we will set up this not-for-profit, we will reach out to other friends and other entrepreneurs and other people who are willing to contribute to this cause. And all we need from Cytecare is the clinical support, as well as, of course, the patients who would need support. So what we do is we create for all our patients who visit, and if they're short of funds or they need some support, we create a document that we send out to Humanists. They evaluate it, they talk to our clinicians if required, and then they reach out to donors who are generous enough to support those patients in terms of cure. And we have supported so many patients through that. It is just heartwarming to see those patients doing well today. Many of them are doing very well, and I think it's wonderful to see that we've been able to support the cause.
Okay, so that's really nice. So considering that cancer is a disease that doesn't stop immediately, but now we have a new thing that's entered our world, said coronavirus, which is further just adding and just making the poor people's life much harder than it already is.
Yeah.
Similarly, what are some obstacles that COVID-19 has got to Cytecare?
COVID has changed a lot of things, I think, whether we agree with it or not. I mean, I think there is a lot of controversy on whether the disease is actually really that serious or not, etc. But on the other hand, we know for a fact that cancer patients are immunocompromised, which means that any infection can be fairly dangerous to them. So I think purely from a patient perspective, because they're more vulnerable, cancer patients are more vulnerable, they have to be extra careful, at least until the vaccines are out or until the infection really dies down and the immunity is available. So I think the next year and a half continues to be an important time for cancer patients to be very, very careful. I think that's the biggest thing, because it's not easy to be so careful all the time. But in the very short run, one of the issues has been travel restrictions, right? I mean, they couldn't come to the hospital. Many of them couldn't access care at all. They couldn't visit or they could not travel. And many of our patients come from outside of India. They come from outside of Bangalore. So all of that has really impacted them. So it's been very disruptive. But also, I think people have learned to adapt. I must say that, Manya, I think sometimes adversity brings change, and change for the good and forever. Patients and doctors and hospitals maybe were very averse to doing telemedicine. And I go back to a subject that was so close to my heart. 20 years ago, I did that, and I find that 20 years ago it was just the wrong time. No technology, obviously poor adoption. Because of lack of access, but even even 19 years later, even 8, 12 months ago, I think people would have not believed that we could do actually so much of video and teleconsultations and get through in terms of the healthcare services. Today, things have changed. I think patients are more willing, families are more willing, doctors are more willing, the hospitals are more willing, and the whole ecosystem suddenly has been made possible for the same thing to happen now a lot more seamlessly. It's nothing like a physical consultation, nothing like the body language and the intuition and the ability to meet each other. But I think there is a next best thing that is possible through video consultation. And maybe in some cases, I believe it could be the first best thing, because it is sometimes important to immediately access a good opinion versus wait for the time and the place to travel and make that appointment. So yeah, it's overall I would say a lot of challenges, but I think the use of technology and the openness to change is also impacted positively for patients.
I completely agree with everything you said. So, Cytecare, as you have said, has been running for the past 19 years and has already created a massive impact on everyone. What would you say is your next, let's say, 5 to 10 year plan? What do you think? Is Cytecare going to change majorly? Are you going to continue what you're doing? What exactly do you have in mind?
Yeah, so Cytecare has been operational now close to 3.5 years, will be 4 years in November this year. If you look at what we want to do, I mean, we are already setting up what we call sub-centers. These are outreach clinics and daycare chemotherapy centers in the city. So over the next few months, you will see some of these opening up in the city. We will launch our first one very soon in the month of October. We also plan to set up 3 to 4 other hospitals, Cytecare hospitals in the country. And what we have in Bangalore is fairly large for the city of Bangalore. So we will set up in other cities of Bangalore. That's really what we plan. We've also begun to serve the local community for others, because when you have a super specialty hospital like what we have in Cytecare, we have what is called an organ site focus team. So for every type of cancer, we have a dedicated team of specialists. And while they can already obviously treat cancer, they can also treat other diseases. So for the neighborhood, we are now expanding for the same specialist to be also available for non-oncology. That is something that we have expanded now. That's about 10-15% of our work will be non-oncology. And we will set up and expand to 3 or 4 centers in the country. We have also got some plans to look at Africa in terms of sub-centers at least, if not full-fledged hospitals in Africa. Maybe Middle East, but Africa for sure.
That's really interesting. So, as I mentioned, that I'm really passionate about this, and I'm pretty sure there are many other teenagers out there who are passionate about this. How do you think teenagers who have, like me, no idea whatsoever how to be with cancer patients can help Cytecare in any form of way? Because I'm pretty sure that the viewers would be interested.
I must go to a story. I mean, I visited a school nearby with one of our oncologists, Manya, and I remember this incident because I've done a lot of corporate talks, we had gone to, and maybe there are some corporate, adults listening into this talk as well, so no offense to anybody. But the point was, we made a lot of effort to communicate about cancer, awareness to do health checks on an ongoing basis, on an annual, biannual basis, risk factors, and a lot of the usual cancer awareness talks. And we used to get a fairly lukewarm kind of reception. Not that the people were not interested, but it was just that, people are kind of less interested. But we went to a school nearby, and there were about 400 children in the audience, 8th grade to 12th grade. And there was a talk given by our senior oncologist, Dr. Prasad. And right after that, there were like 25 brilliant questions from the audience. And not only that, the entire school decided to participate and do something about cancer awareness. And they did a walk in Cubbon Park. And that incident to me was kind of, in my mind at least, a turning point to say, I think we need to work a lot with children and teenagers, because there is the energy and the ideas and the passion and the motivation to change the way we are running this world. And I think this is the future ahead of us in any case. So, and I've now interacted with so many of you from Vidyashilp Academy, directly and indirectly. I know I must thank Ms. Asha and your entire team for that energy and enthusiasm in Vidyashilp Academy. But I really think that you guys, and you I mean as a teenager, really can do a lot to change the way cancer is perceived, first of all. A large number of cancers are curable if detected early, not just managed, but 100% cured. And I think one of our senior doctors, Dr. Hari, always says that cancer is one of the best diseases to treat, because if you can catch it early, you can cure it. It's unlike some of the other diseases like diabetes, for example, where there is no cure, but you have to deal with it for life. Whereas in many of the cancers now, you can cure it. So I think that awareness is a big area where I think you guys can participate. The second, the big thing is in terms of instilling the right value systems in what we do, whatever we do, whether it is healthcare or not healthcare. I really think that values will be all pervading in terms of all businesses, all enterprises, all organizations, and our community and society needs that. What is really the right thing, and having the ability to accept differences of opinion, but at the same point of time being able to look at it from a larger people perspective, I think is where I really want the teenagers to actively participate. And I don't mean from a political movement perspective only, but really what you're trying to say in terms of the community movement perspective, from a contribution to social impact perspective.
So I know, as a matter of fact, Vidyashilp Academy is very into getting children to participate in stuff like this. Do you think that all schools should start letting children participate in co-curricular activities that include, let's say, tying up with Cytecare? Because I've shifted from Vidyashilp Academy to NPS and I can see the huge change. So do you believe that every school should have at least something related to this?
No, it should be mandatory, in my opinion. I mean, I think that it should not be even optional. I think it should be mandatory. Some of us who live in the urban areas, I'm not so sure actually have traveled as much into some of the areas which are not very well developed even within the city, or even about 50 kilometers away. There are regions around Bengaluru, for example, where you will find raw talent and enormous intelligence, but lack of access for the children there in the schools. But the energy is the same or even more. The hunger to perform and do more is even greater, one can argue. And we have traveled a lot, into some of these areas. And I would think that if the children participate, or the teens participate in it, first of all, just get exposure to it, I think it will make a huge difference, because we will recalibrate, I think, our own minds in terms of what is good about our current lives. Sometimes we don't recognize what is so wonderful about our current lives, because we don't realize that there is a world out there which is not so privileged. I really think that we live too much in glass houses or glass factories or glass offices. So getting out there, just a little bit different from the books that we read or the things that we learn about on watching the Idiot Box or the internet only. I think getting out there into what I would say the real world will change perspectives for people. And that is fundamental to the future, because if you don't live in the real world, you're really not going to be able to make an impact at all. So I would say absolutely yes, Manya, we have to get out there and participate, do things, with your own hands. And I think then a lot of change can happen to the world.
Yep, I completely agree on that as well. And actually, I'm thankful that Vidyashilp Academy is one of the schools who encourages this. So,
But I
moving
think,
on.
I must say that, you are an inspiration yourself. And I think I'm privileged to know you. And I think a lot of people would be privileged to know what you're doing because, and there are so many of you like you, but you can inspire so many others. And I think that is the need of the hour.
Thank you so much for that. So, moving on, as we all know, cancer has some stigma in our society. I honestly don't understand why. But do you know why cancer has that stigma and why people are, sort of scared of it?
I can take a shot at it. There's obviously a lot written about it, but a large percentage of the cancers, even today in India, and definitely in the developing world, are detected late. And maybe a couple of decades ago, or 3-4 decades ago, many of the cures available were not available at that point of time. So essentially, when cancer is detected, it almost meant a death sentence, right? Because there was really nothing much you could do. But that was about maybe 2-3 decades ago. Over a period of time now, we have obviously seen enormous changes in technology and medications and drugs, and the way we can treat cancers have completely changed. So obviously that reason in many ways should go away. But I think change takes time. So people are still in that phobia. The second is it was considered to be sometimes hereditary, but only a small fraction of all cancers are really hereditary or transferred through genes. Again, that information was probably not known, and people thought that if a woman gets cancer, then the children are going to get cancer. So there was a lot of stigma against and therefore unmarried women who get cancer, they're very worried to talk about it or even get treated, etc. So those are the reasons probably where cancer has been always a stigma. It's also a disease that requires a reasonable time for treatment today. It's not something that some cancers you just go in and take it out. Obviously, there's just a surgery and you're done. Some maybe it takes a 1.5 2 years of treatment, and then you have continuous follow-up. So it's a drain. It's a drain on energy. It's the side effects of the medications could be quite strong sometimes. So those also result in some form of this weariness, I think, that people don't want to talk about. Therefore, they don't want to get anywhere close to it. These are maybe what I would think are the reasons. I don't know if you have a theory as well.
I think my theory is like as soon as people get educated of what cancer is and that, like you said, it's not transferable at all, then I think that would resolve a huge number of the problems that is caused and stigma caused by it. So yeah, I think this education and awareness would go a huge way.
Sure, absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, and as you had mentioned, you said that cancer is detected in the early stages is curable and completely you go back to your normal life. But I know you're not a doctor, but maybe through your years of experience, do you know how people can detect that, oh, I may have cancer, I should get myself checked out just to prevent it?
Yeah, so, a lot of our doctors always say that be self-aware. And I think be body aware. Your own body will give you the signals if you look closely. And I think maybe we have become a little too busy for the wrong reasons, unable to look at ourselves. And that is one of the first principles in terms of early detection. I think that watching yourself, being aware, can be the fastest way to know whether something is wrong. Of course, you can miss it. And therefore, we have a few health checks, screening checks that to some extent de-risk or identify those risks early. So above the age of 40 or with certain risk factors, you decide whether you do it annual checks or biannual checks, and So there are some algorithms around it, which is trying to minimize the invasiveness of doing a health check, because you don't want to do an invasive health check unnecessarily without any result, right? I mean, that also is something that you need to be conscious about. You don't want to just do like a battery of tests that are not required without any results. So you try and stratify the risk to the extent you can and do a few tests to catch 60-70% of all types of cancers. And I think that's what we would recommend highly. And I think just being body aware and not ignoring symptoms is one of the biggest things that you can do. And I think diagnostics have now become significantly accessible, even in tier 2, tier 3 towns of India. The access to that is now much more easier. So we really can, through awareness, as you say, and education, we make people saying that, hey, go and check yourself. Why are you wasting time? Because if you save time, you will probably save life. But I think the big thing is sometimes not talked about is that you not only are saving a life, you can also save the amount of money you need to spend. Because in the early stage, you may not require as much treatment and cost as compared to the late stages. So it's not only futile in the later stages, but also can be extraordinarily expensive. So I think it is therefore wiser to do as early a detection as possible.
Yeah, completely agree. And as you said, hey, go check yourself out. So as you mentioned, you have several years of work experience. So going slightly off Cytecare, what would be your biggest failure and how did you overcome it? And how do you think all our viewers here should do that as well? Like if they have a big failure, what should we do?
You have to look at things half glass full. I often say that to my colleagues. I say that to myself every day. There's always something that you could do better. Okay. Now you can look at that as a failure, or you can look at that as an opportunity to do better tomorrow. And in our family, we always say that do better than yesterday, and that's all you need to do. Try and do better than yesterday. It's obviously not so easy. If you were, then you would be at a different level of excellence. But so I think those are learning opportunities, what one could call as failures, because really nobody knows. Every single, whether you look at where, which school I went to, or where I studied, or the organizations I worked for, or the people I interacted with, some not so great experiences, one can argue, but all of that is definitely contributing to what I am today, and I think what will be possible for the future, right? So I really think there are so many such stories. I mean, if you look at how I felt in 2002 when our telemedicine startup did not succeed. We had a grand plan and a fantastic team, and we had everything, but it was the wrong time. It was too early for its time. The world was not ready. India was definitely not ready. Technology was not ready, and the mindset was not there. But I don't think it was a waste of time at all. I really think there's so much I've learned through that 1.5, 2 years that is applicable even today after 2 decades. That I would say we really don't need to be worried about failures at all. It is going to definitely contribute for future successes, much more than we can imagine. So I have many stories, but I think that I would rather say that there are so many wonderful things that have happened in life that I'm grateful for, that I don't spend too much time thinking about those failures as failures themselves.
That's a great philosophy to live by. Everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
So, as you mentioned, everything happens for a reason. Do you have any regrets as such, or do you think all of it just led to who you are today?
I wouldn't say regrets, but sometimes you expect faster change. You want greater adoption. You overestimate in terms of how people and organizations can move faster than you've envisioned it at a different pace. And but things take their own time. I think societies move at a pace in some ways, and you can make a definite change and difference But I would expect, for example, a lot more cancer awareness. I would have expected that in this age, in this digital age, so-called age, people would be far more open to be more conscious about their health. I think things have changed in the last 6 months, Manya. I think COVID may have changed a lot of things forever, as I say, because people have become health conscious. I think people have become hygiene conscious. I think washing hands was never such a priority. I think there's been so much of campaigning in India specifically about Swachh and all of that. But Swachh and Swasthya were two themes which were rolled out many years ago. But in 6 months, we probably have achieved what was not achieved in a decade. So again, I would say, I would say we expect faster change, but sometimes maybe events like these are required to push us to change even faster.
I completely agree with that. So on the contrary side, what do you believe is your biggest accomplishment, say whether with Cytecare or in general?
I think, I would say accomplishment is being able to contribute, to be able to be connected to senior clinicians like the ones that we have in Cytecare, to have a team like that, like what we have at Cytecare is a big success factor. And I would attribute it not only to myself, but to all my colleagues, to my co-founders and to my investors. I definitely think they have had an enormous role to play. I'm sometimes just the mouthpiece here, but I think they are really the contributors to that. Yeah.
So, as we know, India is still a very developing country, very much still in development. Do you think that the government is doing enough to help cancer patients?
No, surely. I think there is people often criticize the government for a lot of things, and the government deserves it in some of those cases. But we elect the government; it's our government, right? And I think we need to also take responsibility and accountability for it at some level. So I always say that you got to stand up for what is happening to you, and I think that at some level, I think as India, as citizens of India, we need to stand up for what we get. The government has done a lot. They've set up regional cancer centers. They've really done a lot to reduce the cost of medication by fixing the price of medication. They've invested a lot in technology, and there is a lot of access now through a lot of the government schemes that have been brought in for the poor patients. For below poverty line and slightly above poverty line patients. There is a large number of schemes that the government has introduced. They've tried to digitize it to a great extent to reduce the time and the leakages in terms of the payouts. The frauds have been reduced quite dramatically over the last decade, especially the last 5-7 years. So there is a lot that has been done. Okay. But there is a lot that needs to be done. I mean, there's a huge need. I mean, this is a big subject. So we are on a path of transition, and I think one needs to understand that India is still a developing country. So, and we must acknowledge and accept that. We have to acknowledge and accept that. We have to realize that our population is very large. The needs of the population are increasing across a variety of things, right? I mean, we talk about the need for education, the need for healthcare, the need for access to technology, to communication, the right to vote, so there are so many different aspects of development, and all of those parameters, we are on a path of moving towards sustainable development, right? In that, health has definitely a huge gap. I think we need to increase our funding on healthcare, and now COVID has probably forced that to happen, and probably irreversibly. And I think that will be a good thing. We need to invest a lot more in research, local research. I think that is something that the government has taken many steps to do. There are also public-private partnerships that have been encouraged now. But I think there is a lot more that one needs to do. And the political will for that has probably been forced upon now because of COVID. I don't think that any government in the future will be elected unless they have a huge focus on healthcare, simply because of what we have faced in 2020. So which is absolutely critical, I think, for India.
That's a food for thought. So to wrap it up, how do you, let's say I have a friend who gets cancer, or we have some near and dear person who gets cancer, and before they get cured, while they get cured, after they get cured, what do you think, and how do you think what should we do to support them and be for them?
Well, there's a lot that the family and friends can do. First of all, I think get the right diagnostics done. Okay, so I think staging the cancer, understanding what type of cancer it is, because cancer is not one disease; it is a category of diseases. Okay, there are different types of cancer, so biologically different that they are truly different diseases, but we call them as a group of diseases called cancers. So that's the first thing. I think being aware that it is not the same, being aware therefore to identify and diagnose it right, is the first thing that I think we should encourage anybody that we know to do, rather than immediately go and get treated. Because even if it's cancer and I know it's going to grow, it's not going to grow overnight. Okay, it's something that you can take a couple of days or a few days, a week, and actually do something in terms of the diagnostics. I think that being aware of the need for getting to the right diagnosis, I think, is critical that we can do in helping them. The second is, we in Cytecare we've got something called navigators. We've got cancer survivors who are part of our community, and Dr. Anthony Pies is one of our co-founders and clinical directors, had introduced this concept earlier, and he told us about it, and we said we must go for something like this in Cytecare. And so there are survivors who actually offer their support as navigators. That means they will advise, they are available to on a call for patients. They are willing to support patients because it's a difficult disease to deal with sometimes, and you need the mental stamina, the grit, more than the physical stamina sometimes to just go through it. So people like providing access to the patients and the families, to people who have already gone through it, or being there, just being there for them, just helping them out with sometimes the logistics of things. It's coming every day for radiation treatment for 2 months or 1.5 months can be difficult, and if somebody is available to take care of the child at home or manage some logistics at home, I think those are the things that one could easily do, and would be of enormous help for the patient and the family. So there are so many such things that you and I could do to help cancer patients.
So little things do matter a lot.
Absolutely.
So I think that's all from me. It was great talking to you. I'm pretty sure all the viewers have been listening to us and have some question that I may not have covered. So let's move on to asking the viewers questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so Ramu, we have a few questions that the audience has actually sent across. So the first one is, what is the one thing that you would do differently if you are to start Cytecare now?
I think we have learned a lot on the clinical side of things. I talked a little bit about the design of the hospital, and we had a great team, architect and engineers who came together, and engineering was not a bad idea actually to become part of the hospital, because a lot of the hospital requires engineering, and I probably didn't know about it before I entered healthcare. So it's not a bad thing to be an engineer actually, to be part of the hospital, because there's a lot of engineering behind healthcare actually. But I would say some parts of the design we could have done better. Maybe we could have incorporated some additional facilities at that point of time. But by and large, I would say we had a great team of people who came together, and I'm quite happy with what we have done. There's a lot more to do, so we've just begun our journey, I think. But I think overall, I'm quite happy to say where we are.
Going to the next one, why is Cytecare focused so much on research? One of our viewers here has asked.
So I mentioned earlier that cancer research is about 60% or 70% of all pharma research and R&D. Okay, And why? Because it's still an unsolved problem. Many of the cancers are not solved yet. We don't know how to cure them. And I think, therefore, there's a huge amount of investment happening in R&D for cancer. Therefore, if you're a good hospital, good cancer hospital, then you need to be on the cutting edge of things. Things are changing every few years in terms of how you treat various cancers. There are a variety of clinical trials that are happening world over that you need to incorporate into your standard of care, into your practice. So I think the way you deal with the cancer is continuously changing, and therefore I would say any good hospital has to be actively involved in research and education. Actually.
Yeah, that's great. Ramu, the next question here is a very interesting one. Which is more challenging and more rewarding? The life of an IIT IIM who do run-of-mill stuff versus what you have done by changing healthcare industry?
Right. IIT IIM run-of-the-mill stuff? Oh my. My friends are going to kill me if they think that they are doing run-of-the-mill stuff. No, I think that everybody has a role to play in this world. You know, and I mean it. I really think that everybody has significance and everybody is contributing to it. Okay, nobody is really doing the run-of-the-mill work. If you think if you're doing run-of-the-mill work, you are doing run-of-the-mill work. But if you can look at yourself and see how you're contributing to make this a better world, I think all of us are. So I would only say that very few people had chosen healthcare delivery. I think there's a lack of access to talent, high quality talent, I would say. Not that the talent only sits in IITs and IIMs, but I'm just saying that there is a high quality talent that requires to enter into healthcare delivery in India, specifically now. And I think we have seen a lot of that coming into health tech companies. FinTech and finance obviously took a lot of the high quality talent, but increasingly over the last few years we are seeing healthcare and healthcare delivery also getting talent. So I would say that there is a huge amount that can be done and needs to be done in healthcare. So I would encourage the engineers, the MBAs out there to consider healthcare delivery as an important part of the option, because this is an industry that will continue to grow. There is a huge need in India, and if you're interested in service and being in India and the Indian ecosystem, I think this is a career option that you must definitely evaluate.
Fine. The next question is by Mr. Pranav Ratna. He asks you, how do you reach out to us if we were to associate with Cytecare to bring good quality care in other parts of India beyond Tier 2 cities?
Pranav, nice question. You want to reach out to other parts which are, so 2-3 things you can do. One is, now a lot of people are online, so you can go online and use the online medium for awareness, as Manya and I have spoken already. I think you can do that in Tier 2, Tier 3 towns where still the stigma for cancer is huge and health checks or early detection is still a problem. I think that's something that you can definitely do. We are happy to associate with you in any way. If you want information, you want any expertise, any advice, we are happy to offer that at no cost at all. I mean, this is something that we are doing anyways regularly. We are happy to offer access to you. I think if you have any ideas, feel free to write to me, or pick up the phone and call me, and I'm accessible. I would be happy to share and look at how we can work together. So just let me know. Suresh.ramu@cytecare.com is my email ID if you want to write to me directly, and I'm happy to take this forward.
Okay, Ramu. Here is a question from Mr. Anand. He asks us, how can a school set up a visit with Cytecare?
Oh, so numerous schools have visited, children have visited Cytecare, and we are quite happy to host them actually. And Sheetal, who introduced the session in the beginning, will be more than excited and happy to take the children through it. So, and as I said, we encourage this because I think people have to first of all understand what a hospital really is. I think the fear of a hospital should go away in our minds. Okay, there should be really no need for fear. It's a place where you get diagnosed, you have to get treated. It's like any other institution, any other organization. But the insides of the hospital are fairly complex, and there are a lot of moving parts that I think would be very, very interesting for anybody to see, but definitely for children to see, I think. Before you make career choices, you can look at how many different components go into a hospital. There is a lot of engineering, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of medicine, obviously. So there's a huge number of things that one can look at, and we encourage children visits. So just write to us, reach out to us, write on our Facebook page, and I'm sure we'll organize a session for you or your school. We take small groups so that it doesn't disturb the patients, obviously. We take adequate care that you're not exposed, so you don't have to worry about anything in terms of safety or whatever. We manage that pretty well, and we have done a large number of these now over the years.
Right. So here goes your next question, Ramu. What are the long-term plans and goals of Cytecare? Where do you see Cytecare 5 years down the line, and what new, different are you planning to do from other hospitals like HCG?
I mentioned this earlier. I think we're a good hospital. I don't think we should compare ourselves with others, and I think that was never on the agenda. So let me take that off the agenda. But I think there's a lot to be done, right? I mean, we are involved in a few clinical research studies. We would like to be involved in a lot more. We would like to be involved in a lot more early stage programs. I think that would be very interesting to participate in. We would like to increase our footprint across India, as I had mentioned earlier. We would like to participate in some of the programs for early detection, maybe partner with some organizations and institutions. We've done a couple of NGO tie-ups to allow for that, maybe a lot more that we could do. So that's what we would like to do in the next 5 years. And footprint would be the biggest part of, increasing the footprint in India and Africa would be the biggest part of it.
Great. So the next question here is, can you let us know one incident with a patient of Cytecare that has moved you, brought some change in you, maybe personally or some change, some big change that because of a patient interaction?
Every day I try and meet patients, even today at Cytecare, and that is what really inspires and motivates us to do more, because they are really going through something that we can only talk about, right? And I think that is, when you see them, when you interact with them, you know that there is so much that you can do in your own life. And I think that's the first thing, that you meet any cancer patient, and I think that's what you realize. But there is this one patient of ours who came down from Meghalaya, and an old lady, and I think her interactions with me, I was very fond of her, and she was probably fond of me, and she was maybe in her 70s, and she treated me like a son, literally, and I learned so much in terms of grit, so much in terms of putting up a smile on your face, even though she was going through pain, so much about positivity around her, even though there was not so much of a great news all around her, that I think and she's also contributed to one of our books that we published on patients. I think that is one of my most favorite stories, I think, in terms of what you learn. I think it's important to wake up every morning and say, today is going to be a great day, and the world conspires to make your dreams come true, as Paulo Coelho said. And I believe that she lived that through her life, through her smile, and every day, and I remember her, it's just a smile that comes to my mind, nothing else.
I don't know if you have answered this question from Sachin. He says, how do you maintain such high positive energy in whatever you do? That's our question too.
Maybe it's the patients, maybe it's the stories around them that makes you positive. Energy management is one of my favorite topics. People try and manage time, and I read an article, HBR article on this as well, which was fantastic to read, because it's something that I have believed in. is it's important to manage your energy. It's manage, you constantly need to reinvigorate yourself. Whatever the day has been, the next day morning when you get up, you got to try and wake up positive. And there's so much to do. There's so much positive things around you in your life if you want to look it up. But there's always something negative. There's always something not so good also. But if you just care to look at how good things are around you, I think suddenly life becomes much better. So that gives you energy, because you can make a difference with that. You can, if you smile, the other person smiles, and that is fantastic. I mean, if you can do that continuously, then that itself is a service, actually. So I don't know the answer, Sachin, but I'm trying.
Okay. Few more questions, Ramu. Why suddenly have the corporate hospitals started focusing more on cancer case space, unlike a few years back when multi-specialty hospitals were in focus?
Well, I think cancer, as I said, is not one disease, okay? It is really multiple diseases in that sense. And therefore, you need expertise in each type of cancer to treat and do a really good job of it. So as India evolves, as the healthcare system is evolving, people are recognizing the need to go to specialized cancer hospitals for treating a disease like cancer, right? So I think multi-specialty hospitals were gearing up to treat all diseases, to do some job of every disease, but not really necessarily in terms of the specialization that a specialist, super specialty cancer hospital can do. And that's one reason. The second reason, so I would say the market and the evolution of the market is one probable reason why many hospitals are going that route. The second, I think, is the growth in terms of the number of cases. I mean, we're going to see, and we're going to continuously see over the next almost a decade and a half, at least an 8 to 10% year-on-year growth in terms of the number of cancer cases. And it sounds alarming, but I think it's largely because of better diagnostics and the ability to detect early. And of course, our lifestyle is also becoming more urbanized, and that results in more cancers. So those are probably two reasons why there is a lot more focus on cancer care.
Mr. Kareem asks us about psycho-oncology and what kind of treatment we offer.
Psycho-oncology at Cytecare, yes, mind and mental health is extremely integral to all treatments, actually, but especially for cancer treatment. It's a subject that, Manya, I think you're more close to, but I think, maybe you can say a couple of words on that subject as well. But what we have believed is that you need to create a holistic approach in terms of care, and therefore counseling, psychology, mind-body wellness is an extremely integral part of the care pathways for all patients. And that's what we do. We have got psychologists who are full-time here, who counsel. We do family meetings. We get them on the same page. We the whole path for the treatment is planned out, and we help the patients and the families to navigate the disease. And psychology is not just some talk, but there is a lot of science in it. There is a lot of behavioral science. There's a lot of impact that one can do through those conversations. And if obviously medical intervention is required, we have a psychiatry team as well that can come in and support the patients and the families. But Manya, you have done some work in that area. Why don't you chip in as well in terms of the mental part?
So one of the big reasons why I really respect what Cytecare does is because you give a lot of importance to mental health and what happens after you get cancer. Like, okay, getting cancer is a huge thing, but after the recovery, after curing is also very big as well. But I think mental health as a whole is a very, very new concept in India, and people have just accepted, like, okay, you know what, mental health is a thing. Because until maybe like me, let's say even probably like 5 to 6 years ago, mental health was just like, oh, you're just acting crazy, you become fine. But I think now India is progressing towards it, and organizations like Cytecare are actively helping by letting people realize that yes, mental health is as important as physical health. And if you have a good mental health, your physical health may just become 20 times better, just like that.
Very true.
So, yeah.
Very true.
Okay. So the next question is, give us a little more details about your visit to some of the global oncology centers like Memorial Sloan, etc., that helped you in your plan about site care. What are the few learnings that you have imbibed in site care?
You know, as I said, we visited quite a few centers in the UK and in the US, studied them both offline and when during our physical visits, and a few learnings. I mean, there are a large number of Indian doctors in all of those hospitals, and I think that's just that tells you that the expertise of India in medicine is high up there. Okay, so the Indian doctors are well known world over. So we have the expertise and the specialists right here in India. I think that's number one in terms of learning. The confidence of the ability to do something truly world class was something that we knew, but it was very visible when we visited because of simply the fact that you saw a lot of them from India who are practicing there. Technology wise, I think we were new because we are setting up a brand new institution. So even though we visited some of the large institutions in the US and UK, their equipment was a little bit dated because they've been around for maybe 2-3 decades, and I think that doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just that we have the opportunity to be even more advanced than some of the most advanced countries in the world in terms of care. That is number two. But the big part was the way in which what we call clinical governance was being managed. Okay, what I mean by clinical governance is that when a patient walks into a hospital, how do we know, how do I know, how do anybody know that that is the right treatment, diagnostics and treatment that is going to happen for the patient? How do we know that? And I think there are a variety of methods that have been implemented worldwide and even in India. For example, we have a peer-reviewed tumor board process which makes sure that the patient gets the right treatment, right? And this is something that I found was well implemented in some of the larger centers, probably because insurance demands it in some of those countries, regulation demands it maybe in some of those countries. But in India, there was no such need, and therefore it had to be something that we did for ourselves, for our own need in India. I think that to me is the biggest, can I say, takeaway. A holistic approach for patients and their families is something that we saw implemented in many of those countries. A community program, in fact, we saw very deep community programs. So not just cancer patient communities, but within breast cancer, there will be 4 or 5 different types of breast cancer communities. And depending on the stage of the cancer, there are different communities. So we saw that many of those communities are helping the patients to cope and to deal with the disease, the families to anticipate, to manage the disease. There's a large amount of support system that is evolved, primarily because family is not probably as closely available for a lot of people in those countries. They have to depend on themselves. So the support system that they have built is quite strong. There's a huge amount of investment, of course, in healthcare research and in education. And these are the things that we have tried to take on board and implement within Cytecare.
If I could just hop on and ask one question.
Sure.
To go ahead in the awareness aspect of this, what do you think would be the youngest age that someone could get cancer?
Well, I think infants can get cancer, even less than 1-year-olds can get cancer. And I've heard our pediatric oncologists talk about that as well. But a lot of the children-related cancers are curable. A lot of them are blood or neuro cancers, and if detected early, they are hugely curable. They are also, as individuals and beings, their cells are growing at a rapid rate, and they are evolving as persons. So I think that also helps them cope with the disease. But because they are also too young sometimes, they are not as ready to cope with the disease. So there are challenges at both ends, but more positive than negative news, I think.
Okay, so Ramu, the last question for today.
Okay.
Okay, nowadays we have heard about challenges faced by a cancer hospital in terms of blood requirement. And what are you planning with respect to that?
Well, blood is required for several of our patients for a variety of reasons, even post-surgery or some of our blood cancers or even others. You need blood on an ongoing basis. So We have a full-fledged blood bank at Cytecare that we established, and we have the capability to take blood, run camps and store blood, and also give blood to other hospitals if required. So I would say increase awareness about blood donation. I think that is something that we can do. Build communities if you can around blood donation. I mean, if there are people who are willing to donate, but they don't know that there is a need. So that there is a need to connect the donor to the need from a hospital or a patient perspective. And I think some people have tried that in certain areas. This is something that can help all hospitals and also Cytecare and all our cancer patients. So if there's a way to connect the donors who are willing, first of all, educating and making them aware that they can donate blood and there is no harm, in fact, more gain than loss if you donate blood once in a few months. And the fact that there is such a need for cancer patients and you can save lives is something that I think will be hugely important. So I would say, yeah, let's take the opportunity through this session to communicate to everybody out there that please donate blood, come out there in large numbers. If you are willing to donate blood, let us know and we will put you on our list, and we can even provide you transport if that's an issue for you. We'll pick you up and drop you back because it can save a life, it doesn't matter. It is something that we'll be glad to do.
I did say that was the last one, but I think I have one more. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah. So, any insights about some of the key investors in Cytecare and how they have contributed to the Cytecare story?
All of them have a story and all of them are on our website, and we have several of them, so I won't go through each of them, but they're all accomplished professionals, healthcare professionals, research professionals. They've had their own stories of entrepreneurial journeys that they have led. So they have contributed through a variety of, apart from the funds that they have given for the institution to be built, they have contributed through their ideas, through motivation, through their contacts and networks that we could tap into, even today that we tap into. And the fact that they have always inspired us to do the right thing. And I think no matter what, just do the right thing for the patient. So patient centricity and the theme of patient centricity, I would attribute it to all our investors, really, because without them this would have not been possible.
Okay, so I think we come to this end of the session. Manya, is there anything else that you would like to ask Ramu or anything from your end?
Honestly, it was great talking to you. I learned so much just talking to you for this 1 hour. And thank you so much for taking your time. I'm sure you had a really busy schedule. And I'm pretty sure, just like I did, all our viewers learned a lot about what Cytecare is and what cancer does to someone. So thank you so much. And it was a great honor talking to you today.
Manya, thank you so much. The pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Ramu, before we close, can we have a takeaway message for all people who are on Facebook Live?
Takeaway message, I think, just do the right thing. Yeah, in your jobs, just do the right thing. Ask yourself whether you're doing the right thing. We at Cytecare say RIGHT stands for a certain set of values, and ask yourself what do you believe is the right thing, and I think the world will be a better place.
All right, with
Thank
that,
you.
we come to the end of this Facebook Live session. Thank you all for participating. We had a great time, and thanks for spending so much of time with us, Ramu. Thanks, Manya. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So much.
Yes.
Thank you all for
Bye.
coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.